we'll start with this one. Michael Benson tweeted, Artur Beterbiev has reportedly left DAZN after just one fight on the platform and is set to sign a multi-fight deal with Toprank to defend his IBF light heavyweight title exclusively on ESPN, according to Ring Magazine. These are just my thoughts on Artur crossing the street. You know what might have motivated Artur crossing that street? It might have been that Toprank already had two of the light heavyweight champions on that side of the street. By crossing that street, there's Alvarez over there, and there is Vozdik over there. Now, funnily enough, Artur Beterbiev was asked in the past about a potential Alvarez fight after Alvarez became champion, and this is what he had to say.
Is that a fight that you would like in the future?
What, a later?
Yeah.
What, a later? No, because I think so. No, because we train same trainer. We have same coach. Both of them train with one coach, Mark Ramsey. They have many fighters, you know. If me win all fighters, if don't have fight, you know, what will fight if you think after, yeah. But now, no need, no need that.
Beterbiev let it be known that he's not really interested in that particular fight because they got the same trainer, Mark Ramsey. But you can hypothesize that there's still an incentive to go over there for two reasons. One, because later Alvarez is about to have the rematch with Sergey Kovalev. And in the event that Sergey Kovalev is able to win his title back, that fight would there be on the table for Artur Beterbiev just as well. Even if later successfully defends his title and keeps it, there's still Alexander Vozdik on that side of the street. So there still is an incentive for Beterbiev to go over there, at minimum, for that fight. That's one of the better, if not the best fight the division can give you. The lineal and WBC champion versus the IBF champion. Both are undefeated, both guys know what they're doing in there, they got good amateur backgrounds, they're good technicians, and they both pack a punch. It's one of the more high quality fights, if not the most high quality fight, that light heavyweight can give you. And that way I can kind of see the rhyme and the reason why Beterbiev would have gone over there. Because on the DAZN side of the street, for the duration that Artur Beterbiev has been on the DAZN side of the street, he was their only pony in that show. It's just a bit of a pity, because now reports are saying that Bivol is set to sign a multi-fight deal with DAZN, and it will see him defending his WBA title against Joe Smith Jr. So the fucking timing is impeccable. As Artur Beterbiev decides to cross the street, Bivol ends up on that side of the street. It's a pity. It's a pity, because we know that that's a fight that Eddie Hearn wanted to make. And that fight in and of itself is a high-quality fight. Once again, it involves two undefeated champions in the weight. And I think, had Bivol and his handlers made up their minds as far as where they want him to go a little sooner, because remember, Bivol was a free agent, had they made up their minds a little bit sooner and ended up on DAZN a little bit sooner, that might have kept Artur on that side of the street, because then him and his handlers could have, you know, they might have told themselves, hey, you know what, they just got Bivol on this side of the street, we should look into that fight, we should look into making that fight. Maybe we stick around so that we can have that fight. But as it stands, you know, people were wondering for a while, I was wondering for a while, where the fuck is Bivol going, and what's taking so goddamn long? So, you know, while that's going on, one can imagine that Artur Beterbiev is thinking to himself that, you know, hey, you know, Toprank, they've got some situations over there that I might want to be a part of. Perhaps I should go over there, because right now, you know, there's just not a lot of the, you know, the bigger names in my weight class, they're not over here. But two of them, they are over there. And even if I don't want to do an Alvarez fight, if Sergey beats him, I would like to do that Sergey fight. So, you know, maybe that's the rhyme and the reason, who knows. But I'll tell you that it's kind of inconsequential to the boxing fans. The promoters, let them do the promoting, the networks, let them do the networking. Us, the fans, it's a bit inconsequential for us, and here's why.
Might be good news.
I've no doubts that the people over there at DAZN, they're going to keep Bivol busy in the in-between time, right? That they're going to keep that guy fighting, they're going to, you know, want to put him on cards, the whole nine, all that jazz. But over there on the Toprank/ESPN side of things, now, they've got 3 of the 4 world champions at 175 pounds. And I've no doubts that that makes those fights between those fighters that much more feasible, now that they're all either being promoted or co-promoted by Top Rank, and they're all going to be featured on ESPN. Given the topographical environment of things between the promoters, the rival promoters, the networks, the rival networks, given the topographical environment of boxing today, everybody is under pressure to make the best fights possible, the highest quality fights possible to garner viewership.
And compete.
In that way, that puts everybody in a situation to where you can't have these fighters sitting on the shelf and you can't have these good fights sitting on the shelf. You've got to make as many of them as you can consecutively to keep up with the Joneses. Because if you don't, you're going to get left in the dust. And I've no doubts that the Bob Father, he'll make those fights in a timely fashion. You know, maybe we see Artur in a Keep Busy fight. Maybe we see him in one of those.
Likely next.
I've no doubts that Vozdik, he might be involved in a Keep Busy fight in the near future, something along those lines. But it all will end up with these guys fighting each other. That's going to be what happens. And because they're all under the same banner, it's that much more feasible. It's that much more likely, and it won't take forever. It won't take fucking years. We got other outfits out there where they've had guys that have been on the same side of the street for fucking years. Haven't fought yet. Y'all know who the fuck I'm talking about. I'm talking about the PBC. How long has Errol Spence been waiting to get a Keith Thurman fight? Sean Porter fight? Danny Garcia fight? How long? Yeah, years. You look at a little lower. You look a little lower in the lower weight classes. 126 pounds. Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell. Those guys have been on the same side of the street forever. For years. 2018, Leo Santa Cruz fights once. 2018, Gary Russell fights once. Why couldn't they have capped off the year with those two guys fighting each other? Beats me. They're on the same side of the street.
They've been.
Now that kind of crap, it doesn't go on at Top Rank. I've no doubts that Bob Arum will make that fight. And it's really just a matter of time. I mean, look at what's going on at 135. Look at the trajectory that Vasyl Lomachenko is on. The Jorge Linares fight, that wasn't a hard fight to make. The Jose Pedraza unification fight, that wasn't a hard fight to make. And the wheels are already in motion for Vasyl Lomachenko to face the winner of the Richard Comney versus Isa Chaniev fight and have yet another unification fight for the IBF title. This is the reason that I've no doubts that watching the champions at light heavyweight, now that three of them are on the same side of the street, I have no doubts that that's only a matter of time. We're going to get them fights. This is what I mean when I say that it's inconsequential to us, because we're still going to get the best fights out of that weight class that we was asking for. We're still going to get the fights that we wanted to see. And while we're seeing those fights, Bivol is on the DAZN side of the street, building his brand, building his profile. By the time a winner on the ESPN/Top Rank side of the street is decided, when all the smoke clears and one guy's left holding 3 of the 4 major titles, a fight with Bivol
will roll around
against that winner. You understand? It's that much more possible because there's that much more of an incentive for that fight to happen. Everybody will have built their profile enough at that time that the fight is worth considerable value and it needs to be made. Understand that all these other outfits, all these other networks, they don't have the fractured relationship that the PBC has with everyone. I mean, these guys don't want to work with anybody but Top Rank, the people over there at DAZN, the people at Matchroom, just the whole shebang bang, the whole shit. Those guys don't have a fractured relationship with each other. They're willing to work with each other. It's only PBC that really gives everybody friction. They give everybody else friction. That's why I reiterate, this is inconsequential, and this makes the big fights at 175 that much more possible. Now, in regards to the upcoming fight between Dimitri Bivol and Joe Smith Jr., my thoughts on this thing. Most of the particulars are going to be announced on Friday at a conference, the date, the venue, etc., etc. What could we expect on the undercard? Stuff like that. So these are just my thoughts on the matchup itself. Is it a good matchup? And I dare say yes. You got to understand something about Dimitri Bivol. This guy don't have a lot of fights, yet he's in there with world-level competition already. Tough contenders, tough journeymen. Former champions. This is a guy with 15 fights and he's already got the name of Jean Pascal, Isaac Chilemba, Cedric Agnew, Sullivan Barrera, and very soon, Joe Smith Jr. And this is a guy that only has 15 pro fights.
It's a good start.
It's almost like boxing fans don't realize that your run-of-the-mill guy that turns pro does not face this level of competition this soon in their professional career. So this really accents the skill level of Dimitri Bivol, the fact that they feel confident enough, his handlers feel confident enough to put him in there with these kinds of guys that have far more world-level experience and far more professional fights than he does. The matchup itself, is it a winnable fight for Dimitri Bivol? I dare say yes. You see, Joe Smith Jr. is a very, very dangerous puncher, and he's been in there with some people we know what he's famous for, upsetting the plans for Andres Fanfara, and retiring Bernard Hopkins by knocking him clean through the ring.
You mean out?
Rather, clean out the ring. We know what he's famous for. Joe Smith Jr. packs a sizable punch, but in spite of that, it still is a winnable fight for Dimitri Bivol, and it's a good learning experience for him because Joe Smith Jr. gives him that, to have to work around, that you can't get careless with Joe, because you don't want Joe to hit you. Thing is, Joe Smith Jr. relies on guys opening up and trading with him to land those big punches, to land those big shots. He's got a dog in him. He's trying to suck you into a war. But it just so happens that Dimitri Bivol has enough in and out game, enough bounce, enough pep in his step to play with the range, to confuse and befuddle Joe Smith Jr., who may not be able to find him in there.
He's moving in and out.
He's also got enough hand speed to do the business and get the hell out of there. Do the business and get the fuck out of Dodge. He also seems to pack a bit of a punch himself. So while Joe Smith Jr. does bring something to the table, he brings a sizable punch for Dimitri Bivol to have to work around. It is entirely within his realm of abilities to work around that punch and secure the victory. I've no doubts about that. I'm confident that this is a fight that Bivol can win, but it's also a good learning experience. The fact that at 15-0, you're in here with a puncher who's got this size of a punch, and you get to take something from that experience. You get to become a more well-rounded, well-versed fighter in the process. Most guys are not facing this kind of a puncher at 15-0. Their handlers won't let them. Their handlers won't let it happen because they're not ready to have to work around a guy like that. Whereas Dimitri Bivol has shown time and time again that he's a cut above a lot of other guys out there. He's one of these champions, like Vosdik, like Beterbiev, that they've got a lot of tools and they exhibit a lot of skills in spite of not having very many professional fights. So I think it's a winnable fight for Dimitri Bivol. It's certainly as good a keep busy fight as you could have hoped for. I reiterate that most other guys that go pro are not facing a puncher like this for at least another, I don't know, 5, 10 fights. Some guys out there are 20-0 before they're facing a puncher like this. If you want an example, look at Anthony Yarde. This is a guy with 2 more pro fights than Dimitri Bivol has, yet he ain't no world champion.
Nope.
He's about 17-0 with 16 KOs, very close to 20 more professional fights than Dimitri Bivol, and yet there is a great disparity between the quality of his competition and the quality of Bivol's competition. I mean, think about it. Bivol's already a world champion, whereas Anthony Yarde is turning down fights left and right with world-level competition. Shit, I think he was supposed to be fighting Sullivan Barrera and that shit fell through. How many fights has Anthony Yarde turned down? You understand? Now, this is the thing, because I don't even want to slight Anthony Yarde. The biggest difference between these two guys is some guys are ready for that world-level competition due to their amateur background. So they get off to a really good start. It's almost like a head start. Whereas a guy like Anthony Yarde, who has a very slim amateur background, he's not an Olympian or anything of that sort. He needs that bring-along process. Most guys that go pro, they need that process. Most do. So there's a difference between a guy like Anthony Yarde, which, the vast majority of fighters, they're fighting that level of competition at 17-0, and Dimitri Bivol, who's already world level, he's already a champion, and he's already had title defenses, and he's slated to have yet another. Context is key here. This is why I tell you guys, for a guy who's only 15-0, for him to have fought Samuel Clarkson, Cedric Agnew, Isaac Chilemba, Sullivan Barrera, very soon Joe Smith Jr., you gotta realize that's a hell of a nice little resume you got there for a guy who's only fought 15 times as a professional. It's all coming together. So I have no complaints about the fight. I think that there's something to be derived from the fight, that it gives Bivol something to have to work around, and it's a good little situation, so no complaints from me. Just look out for the details on Friday when they have the press conference for this thing. And there's a new development in the case of Kell Brook after being snubbed by Amir Khan to go over there and face Terrence Crawford. It appears that there are talks underway for Kell Brook to face former WBO welterweight champion Jesse Vargas in April. And what really grabbed my attention about all of this, or at least what has my attention, is at what weight is the contest going to be staged? Because we know that Jeff Horn's promoters, those guys, they've expressed an interest in facing Kell Brook in his own backyard. They're willing to go to the UK for the fight, and the fight would presumably be at junior middleweight. Whereas Jesse Vargas, he still campaigns at welterweight. So what I'm left wondering is
this at welterweight?
Is this going to be a welterweight fight? Is this the beginning of Kell Brook reintegrating himself into the welterweight division after struggling for so long to make that weight? I honestly feel like both of those fights have the same value. You know, I will say, I feel that Vargas is a better boxer than Jeff Horn, even though Vargas doesn't really pack much of a punch. But Vargas does show, you know, some more polished boxing than Jeff does. Jeff is still, you know, very physical, very crude. He still looks like, you know, he's got some, you know, some fine-tuning maybe. He needs to iron out the edges. But for Brook, it would have been more, you know, let's put it this way. If this Vargas fight is at 147 pounds, then the Horn fight would have been more beneficial, because then you wouldn't have to make that weight. You could have the fight where you are now, where you have been your last 2 fights. You know, the Zarafa fight, that was a junior middleweight fight. Brook didn't look too good in that fight, but all the same, it was a junior middleweight contest. Whereas if you go to 147 for Brook, that might take a little bit of the fight out of you. That may take a little something out of you. It all depends on where the contest is staged. Because I'll tell you that, you know, both opponent choices, they're decent options. Either one of them, Jeff Horn, Jesse Vargas, they are both decent opponent options. They have a similar fiscal value. You know, that both of those fights are worth about the same. But it is kind of beneficial for Brook to have the fight in his backyard and have the fight at a weight that he's been campaigning at. And if that's the case, then that would make the Horn fight the more attractive fight. And in a lot of ways, the more winnable fight. You know, people kind of look past Jesse Vargas in a lot of conversations, but you've got to look at his resume and really see that this guy's got very good experience. He's got a very good experience level. He's a very polished boxer. I think that that would be a bit of a tougher test for Kell Brook. You know, that you are in there with a guy who's not so crude. This guy can box. Whereas with Jeff, you'd have things working for you, that it would be in your backyard, that this kid's still kind of green. I mean, Ye had the Pacquiao fight, but, you know, that was a controversial fight. A lot of stuff. The point is that it all depends on at what weight the contest is being staged. Because if Kell Brook's got to drop back down to 147 pounds for Jesse Vargas, man, you might as well stay up there at 154 and fight Jeff Horn. But, you know, in any event, regardless of which direction Brook decides to go, either opponent choice is fine by me. So we'll see if they iron this thing out and have this fight in April. Just have to wait and see.